Wow, Madam Deputy Speaker. I should let the honourable gentleman intervene more often if he's going to. If he's going to say that the only problem with Liz...
The British Parliament erupted during Opposition Motion Day on the 26th of February 2025, where the Tories decided they were going to actually pretend to care about them small family businesses, and always have done during 14 years of Tory rule and gruel, and especially through Brexit as well. Well, after Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride showed how a Tory government would slash welfare workers' rights and anything that would have made vulnerable people's lives better, the Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray, was going to remind this ridiculous opposition of the last 14 years of their time in power. Then, Tory faceache, Dr. Luke Evans asked him to give way, and I bet he wish he hadn't.
National interest to support our security and prosperity. And so, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me start by briefly reminding the Conservative members opposite of the context in which those decisions have been made. That context is, of course, the inheritance that this country faced after 14 years of the party opposite being in power. I'll give way.
2010, this government, the then government, had to borrow £158 billion. Of course, fast forward another decade, we had something called the pandemic, where we had to borrow £400 billion. So on the top of that, collectively, that's a great big difficulty to be dealing with. Now, I sat in this chamber 5 years ago, when the pandemic happened, listening to all the interventions asking for more spending of money. This is the problem that the Conservative government have dealt with. Does he not agree?
The honourable gentleman said we had something called the pandemic. We also had a Prime Minister called Liz Truss, and that had a pretty big impact on our economy. And I know the Shadow Chancellor is distancing himself from it. I would welcome an intervention from his colleagues if they would like to leap to Liz Truss's defence. I'll give way. No, they're not seeking to intervene on me. Funny that, Madam Deputy Speaker. There's no intention to intervene on me there. Perhaps in closing, one of the other shadow ministers can refer to Liz Truss's record and defend that. Yes, Liz Truss's record.
So the way I see it, the problem is Liz Truss with her budget was she didn't set out her workings. The problem with Rachel Reeves's one is she did, and the country and the world doesn't believe it. That is far more detrimental to the situation we find ourselves in, because she can't get out of that problem. That is the difference between Liz Truss and Rachel Reeves.
Wow, Madam Deputy Speaker. I should let the honourable gentleman intervene more often if he's going to. If he's going to say that the only problem with Liz Truss is that she didn't set out her workings. I think the problem was rather more fundamental than that, as people across this country will attest. But frankly, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is no wonder that members opposite want to bury their heads in the sand and try and pretend the last 14 years did not happen. It was 14 years of mismanagement and decline, along with jolts of disaster, digging ever deeper holes in our public services and our economic resilience. It was their decisions that led to their resounding electoral loss last year, and it was their record in office that made the difficult decisions that we had to face on entering government necessary. I'll give way.
Absolutely spot on. Now, for me, whether you're a Labour supporter or not is immaterial. Whether you support SNP, Lib Dems, or even Plaid Cymru or any other party, the last 14 years of Tory rule and gruel you just cannot ignore, can you? And then there comes the Liz Truss mini-budget, isn't there? You know, all of Dr. Luke Evans' interventions were typical Tory nonsense of the reason why everything went wrong and was absolutely nothing to do with their decisions, wasn't it? It was all to do with the war in Europe and COVID and ignoring Brexit and the mini-budget. Speaking of COVID also, which Prime Minister cut funding for stuff like pandemics, Dr. Luke Evans? Well, that's right, Spafford Johnson. And which party at the time was in government at the time, Dr. Luke Evans? Oh, that's right, the same party you represented, completely exposing the weakness and irrelevant opposition we have, and it's a crying shame that the Lib Dems ain't holding this government to account as an opposition party instead, isn't it? But the Liz Truss mini-budget, I found that incredibly interesting, because when it came to actually admitting that the mini-budget crashed the economy and was absolutely catastrophic for the country, he just couldn't do it, could he? He did try to distance himself slightly from Lettuce Liz by saying that she did not set out her working and everything would have been fine if she had, but didn't criticise the mini-budget, did he? That sounds like to me that he's saying that if she had set out her workings, it would have been the best budget anyone would have ever seen. Oh, it would have been absolutely marvellous, you know. Just ask Nigel Farage. And that tells me that they not only secretly still want a Liz Truss mini-budget, they secretly desire it as well in future. Now, also, I did get thinking, now those who say that everyone should stop talking about the mini-budget, the Rwanda plan, the COVID debacle and even Brexit, for me personally, I go the other way because for me the public need to be reminded constantly of which party who cannot be trusted with the public coffers ever again. And to be honest, I do wish Labour would remind the public which party unleashed Brexit on us as well. Maybe one day, But what do you guys think? Let me know down below. And if you enjoy everything, House of Commons and Select Committee meetings, just give us a like and subscribe. And I shall bid you farewell and take care, my friends.